Today we have one of the Libertarian Party's official presidential candidate, Dan Behrman, joining BoStoners for an interview. Mr. Behrman is a software engineer, internet personality, and a podcaster, just like us. A nominee for Texas State Representative in 2014. Dan, thank you very, very much for taking your time to discuss your presidential candidacy with BoStoners. We greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Daniel, your slogan is "Taxation is theft," and your position is that any person should be free to live their life however they prefer, so long as they don't hurt others and don't take their stuff. Together with that, you would significantly reduce the size of and the scope of the government, roll back all income tax, close the Federal Reserve and IRS, and daylight savings time, and massively cull the criminal justice system. This kicks ass. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Which part? Which one's your favorite?
Let's start with IRS.
All right. So, yeah, the IRS is, for lack of a better term, it's a criminal organization. The income tax is completely illegally and immorally applied to people who, according to the law, don't even have to pay it. But taxes in general are coercive, right? We all pay them because we're afraid of what will happen if we don't. Either they're going to come to our house and take our stuff by force, kick us out of our house, empty our bank accounts, whatever they can do, or they might even throw us in jail. And that's the fear. And a lot of people say, but I like paying my taxes and, this sort of thing. And, they like the government's there and government provides all these wonderful services to them. But they forget that the government also does a lot of things that they don't like. There's not a single person who likes everything that the government does. But regardless of whether or not you like all those things, you're paying for them. So if you don't like the wars, too bad, you're paying for them. And the problem with, government, let government exist. Okay, fine. Let government raise money. Okay, fine. But government shouldn't be going around stealing from people, especially when it's supposed to hold, it's supposed to be the moral authority on not stealing, not killing, that sort of thing.
Sure.
But then it has this process called taxation where it actually does steal. It takes property from us, our money,
Sure.
without our consent. And we can't allow that to happen. Now, that doesn't mean, like I said, that doesn't mean government can't exist. That doesn't mean it can't raise money. It just means we have to find ways that it can raise money that are more voluntary. So, for example, you look at the post office, it sells stamps. It sells a service.
Sure.
And aside from the fact that it maintains a monopoly by force, by basically threatening violence against anybody who wants to start another post office to compete, it raises money. The court systems, if somebody wants to sue McDonald's for $100 million, let a portion of that go to the court system. I mean, they're already paying court fees, right?
Right.
Let a portion of that pay for the court system that they're using to seek compensation for the injury that they sustained. And ultimately, it's not the victim who's paying that. It's the I wouldn't really call it a criminal, but the organization that loses has to pay these court fees to allow this court to exist. So, it's not that the government can't raise money, it can't exist, or any of these things. We just have to understand that we have to figure out ways that we can raise money that don't involve just putting a gun to someone's head and saying, give it to me or else.
Racketeering.
Exactly.
Yeah. I come from a country, from former Soviet Union, where it was pseudo-socialism and pseudo-communism, not a genuine communism or socialism. So what happened? We allowed the government. It was a monopoly government, one-party system, and eventually all the ruling people that were involved in the government, they became so corrupt. Every one of them was it was like a big mafia, and they just milked and milked and milked the system. They tortured people, they stole from people. So I can definitely see some parallels.
Right.
Let's say you're elected, and how do you go about just saying, we're done with IRS, we're done with this and that?
I mean, the first thing we can do is we can tell them, look, okay, you have your tax code, enforce it as the law says. And what that basically means is all these people, all these individuals who are working their jobs don't legally have to pay the income tax. They're going to stop paying it immediately. But I mean, short of that, we just walk in there and say, hey, we're downsizing. Sorry, yeah, you guys are gonna lose your jobs, but don't worry, we're gonna create the fact that the income tax is going away is going to create so many other jobs. So if you're working for the IRS and you're worried about your job security, don't worry, there will be so many other jobs for you. Same if you're working for an accounting firm that mostly makes their money off of submitting tax returns for people. There's going to be plenty of other jobs. Don't worry about it. But yeah, it really, with that organization, we don't need, so I talk about like with the FDA, we have a transitional program where we're going to work our way out of the FDA's monopoly on approving drugs. With the IRS, we don't really need that. We can really just shut it down. And a lot of people think that the income tax pays for roads and it pays for, police and fire departments and all these other things. No, those are actually paid for mostly by your local taxes, which are mostly hidden from us. We don't even know how much we're paying in taxes, but that's where those come from. So the income tax itself is really something that can be shut down. Most of the money just goes towards paying interest on the debt, which I'm sorry to say we're going to be defaulting on some of that debt. And the rest of it goes to pay for war, which we're going to be calling all of the military to come home. So there's not going to be much war to fund.
Exactly.
And
there won't be many wars without America involved.
right.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, as you noticed, I'm wearing a red jacket. Now, this reminds me of the British troops that wore red clothing, military, right? And this
Right.
also reminds me what the pioneers fought for, freedom from tax from England, right?
Hmm.
And they fought for tax abolishment from the from the England, and right after we won the war, right, they imposed taxes, even
Right.
higher taxes than queen or whoever was ruling at that time imposed. So that's like pathetic to me.
It is, and it's so here's what's interesting too, because a lot of people, if you bring up that point that that revolution was fought over taxes, a lot of people bring up this phrase taxation without representation, and they think the only reason that we fought that revolution was not because there were taxes, but because there wasn't representation for the taxes. But that was only a small part of it. In fact, that had been around for like a century before. That people would always say no taxation without representation. But if you read the Declaration of Independence, it actually says taxation without consent, and that's really, I think, all taxation is without consent. But because if you consent to it, it's really more like a user fee or a service fee or something like that. But it really, that I think is the most important one. Taxation without consent, raising money without consent, taking my money without my consent is the most evil way for governments to raise money.
And there's no reference in the Constitution about taxation or anything like that, right? There's no.
There is, but it's interesting because if you read it, it actually says, so it talks about there's two different types of taxes that they're allowed to create. One is a direct tax, which says it has to be apportioned among the states based on their population. If you read that, it really sounds kind of like they're saying you can levy a tax on the states. But if you think about the relationship between the states and the federal government, they voluntarily signed the Constitution. Representatives of the state signed. So if you're going to tax the state, that's no different than charging someone who you have a contract with and saying, well, we have this contract, you got to pay a fee, an HOA fee or something like that, right? Then you have indirect taxes, which are basically privilege taxes. And if you think about this, these are kind of consensual as well because they're supposed to be, for example, if you get a special privilege from the government, you're going to pay for that. And so that's also consensual because, ideally, assuming the government didn't have a monopoly on everything, you'd be able to just take your business elsewhere and get something from someone else and not deal with government and its special privileges. So in that way, they talk about taxes, but they're they still require some level of consent. And I think that's just the fact that they used the word tax might have been part of the problem in that when really they could have called them fees at that point.
Right, right. Well, I strongly support abolishment of taxes. That's like a big step. We're suffocated by them. Uh, uh, Middle class families are screwed by them. It's all like a
Hmm.
big slavery mechanism. You think about it,
Absolutely.
slavery is not really abolished in America. When I drive to work on the highway and I look at the amount of cars in traffic that are going, they must go to work. If they don't, they're fucked. They're gonna lose their house. They're gonna lose their car. They're gonna go to jail because they won't be able to pay, if they owe taxes
Property
or
tax and
child support,
everything.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, proper. So this is like a very uncomfortable situation for free people, and America is called country of the free. Now I think we need to either redefine what's free or choose or change our system and change the presidents that we elect. Uh,
Right. Yeah, I mean, you bring up some really important points. I mean, we look back at America maybe 100 years, and people were trying to bring themselves up, rise up, and be something more than what they were. Not working day to day to earn a paycheck and finally retire when they're 90. They were working to save money to put it in the bank to buy property so that eventually one day they could retire and live off the land that they have. And a lot of people complain, especially a lot of poor people or middle class people complain about inheritance taxes, when really, like, we should forget about inheritance taxes. We should all be working for that, because think about it. If there are there are enough houses in this entire country for everybody to own one. And imagine if you, which maybe you don't have a job that pays a lot of money, maybe you don't have a fancy house, but you have this piece of property and you have kids. When you die, you can pass that property to your kids. And if they own it and if they don't have to pay property taxes on it, this means that they get to live their lives enjoying their life on something that you created and provided for them, so that they can actually enjoy their lives and be creative and productive in ways that aren't just serving these big corporations and not just going to work, day after day just to pay the property tax, just to pay their food bill and all these other things. They're actually growing their own food. They've got the time and resources to be able to do that. They have land that they don't have to work day in, day out just to keep the land that they already have. This is what the American dream is. This is what we should all be fighting for. And instead, the politicians have convinced us, no, we need to take all of that away from everybody, not realizing that we're taking it away from ourselves. They convince us, oh, we're going to take it away from the billionaires. We're going to take it away from people who have so much more than us. But really, they end up taking it away from all of us, and none of us have it, and we hand it all over to these billionaires. And that's just the way it's been. We can't give them that power. We need to keep that power for ourselves, and we need to start building up and investing in our own lives so that we can live successful and happy lives and pass that on to our kids and allow them the same.
without constantly being milked by the taxes, right? Power to
Right.
the people, as they say.
Exactly.
uh, so let me just explain to our fans a little bit what your party is about. My friends, the Libertarian Party is a political party in United States that promotes civil liberties, non-interventionalism, laissez-faire capitalism, which means an economic system in which transactions between private parties are absent of any form of government intervention, such as regulation, privileges, tariff, and subsidies, and limiting the size and scope of the government. The party was conceived in August 1971. Mr. Behrman, let me ask you the following question. The 2016 elections saw the highest vote total and percentage of votes for the Libertarian presidential ticket ever, with former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson and his running mate, our neighbor here from Massachusetts, Governor Bill Weld, receiving over million votes and 3.28% of total vote. What do you think the percentage of winning numbers will be this time around for your party?
It's really hard to say. So in 2016, it was kind of the perfect storm because there were so many people who just didn't want Trump and didn't want Hillary. And so I think, and even though, I think you said it was 3.8%, that's a really small piece of the pie. But I think a lot of that still came from people who didn't know the Libertarian Party too well, but they got to the ballot box and they saw Democrat, Republican, Hillary, Trump, and then somebody else. And a lot of
An
those people were
alternative,
like,
an alternative. Yeah.
exactly. And so I think, a lot of people say most people are libertarian, they just don't know it yet. And I think that's really true. I've talked to so many people, and whether they're socialists, democratic socialists, and they support Bernie Sanders, whether they're hard, extreme right, activists, whatever you want to call them, Republicans, Democrats. I've talked to the whole spectrum, and they have their opinions on things that are very much in tune with those parties. But if you really talk to them on the level of, let's stop talking about the plans that they're pushing, building the wall, socialized healthcare, and all that. Let's talk about the actual problem and how do we fix the problem. And when you start talking to everybody on this level, a lot of people actually come out and say, yeah, that's true. We should fix this problem. We can actually all agree, the left, the right, the Democrats, the Republicans, we can all agree on what the problem is if we look at it that way. But the political conversation is trying to keep our attention away from the problem because, of course, the problem is the political system. They're trying to keep our attention away from that and into this big divide to keep us separated. And so a lot of people actually are libertarian, but we've had such a hard time trying to get this message out to reach so many people. So I think that's why even 3.8% is still a very small piece of the pie. But what we're doing with this campaign, what we've already been doing is proving that we can reach these people on both sides of the aisle, whether they're far left and right or whether they're moderate. And we've been able to reach them with this message. We've been able to teach them about libertarianism and about the idea of taking care of ourselves and stop relying on the government and stop giving the government so much power over our lives. That this is creating kind of a grassroots movement. And we've reached over 1 million people already with this message, and
Nice.
we want to keep going strong. And so it's really, once we get the nomination in May, that's the first step that we're working for. This is when the entire party is really going to get behind this platform and start pushing it. And once that happens, since this is such a stronger platform, a stronger message, and it's resonating more with people than what we've had in the past, it's going to go much further. So if we can put the same amount of energy behind this campaign as we did behind the Johnson Weld campaign in 2016, we can go so much further.
Awesome. And I think your party is very appealing to young people, to students, to millennials. And I know not a lot of young people vote, and I encourage them to do so because, guys, if you don't vote, we're gonna have same assholes ruling the country. We don't
Exactly.
want that. Without your vote, don't ignore your vote. I'm an American citizen. I haven't voted. This last year was the first year I started voting, because before I was like, fuck all these guys, and then I'm like,
Right.
no, you can't be ignorant because you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot with this stuff, or shoot your
Yeah.
kids or grandkids in the foot. Daniel, can you please touch on the subject of cannabis for our viewers?
Absolutely. So, as I say, pineapple pizza is, nobody has the right to tell you what you can or can't put into your own body, especially if you're not hurting anybody else. That's really the whole platform behind pineapple pizza. It's a lot of people look at pineapple pizza and they're like, that's absolutely disgusting. Yeah, but would you really want the government to ban it? Is that the government's place? Is that really where you want your tax dollars spent? And when you look at the cannabis,
Fighting
the
with
war on
pineapple
drugs,
pizza, right?
what's that?
Like DA after pineapple pizza.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Busting into door like, "Ooh, free, everybody freeze on the floor." Where's the pizza?
It's insane, but that's when you think about it, that's really what they're doing with cannabis, because cannabis it's not harmful, it's not dangerous, it's it's something that people enjoy recreationally. The Ninth Amendment of the Constitution. This is a really important one. We all know the first and second, and nobody knows the third. Go look that one up. We all know the fourth and the fifth, but nobody knows the ninth. And the ninth is really important. If you read the ninth, it basically tells you that we listed out your rights, right? The first and the second and the fourth and the fifth, that says, you don't have to talk to the police, you don't have to testify against yourself, you have the right to speak freely, to practice whatever religion you want. But the Ninth Amendment says, look, we didn't grant you rights, because the Constitution doesn't grant rights. It says, it orders the government to protect those rights. The Ninth Amendment says, even though we recognize all these rights that we listed out, we enumerated in the Bill of Rights, we understand you've got so many other rights, and we just can't list them all. We probably couldn't even think of them all. Even if we had the space to write them all down, we probably couldn't even think of them all, especially since times change. So the Ninth Amendment says you have so many more rights than are written here in the Bill of Rights. But everything that's in the the Declaration of Independence, where it says you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, those are also your rights. And so under the Ninth Amendment, if we were to really pursue this, I think we should demand that the right to consume cannabis is protected by the United States Constitution under the Ninth Amendment. And I think that's really, really important to understand, because so many people, if I were to walk out there and say, well, smoking weed is my constitutional right, everyone's going to say, where's that in the Constitution? That's not in there.
Right.
It doesn't need to be. That's the
Right.
point of the Ninth Amendment. It's to say, like, just because it's not in here doesn't mean the government has the right to control our lives.
For sure, for sure. That's well said. Uh, so this is going back in the days. In June 1961, a 57-year-old performance artist and an activist, Behrman Supreme, from Rockport, Massachusetts, uh, who was known for wearing a boot as a hat and carrying a large toothbrush, and has said that if elected president of the United States, he will pass the law requiring people to brush their teeth. He has campaigned on a platform of zombie apocalypse awareness and time travel research, and promised a free pony for every American. Now, besides the goofy appeal and the goofy things that he said, he was a passionate activist, uh, and Supreme's vision of anarchism holds no need for government, but depends on citizens to take the responsibility for themselves and for the others, citing mutual aid and support and care to our fellow citizens as a key element. Daniel, what can you tell us about that dude?
That dude is awesome. So we're running against each other, but I mean, he's an awesome guy. There's nothing I can say bad about him. He does have a crazy platform, but it's satire. He's making fun of the promises that the politicians make, and I think at his core, he is very libertarian. He's had a history of going to these very like anarchist communities, where some people, I believe they were dealing in barter, like the Burning Man type things that you hear about. He has really been active in that, and he has really been critical of the way politics is in our world today. And he does it through this act that he puts on. So I think he's a really great guy. I think his platform is amazing. But of course, as I like to point out, it is socialism. You are going to have the police kicking down your doors, forcing you to brush your teeth, and the ponies that he's giving away are probably going to be inbred and have all kinds of deformities and three legs and everything else. So they're not going to be worth a full pony. That's my stab at him.
I do have to say that I love the hat that he wore for his president candidacy.
And my hat's better. So
it is
yeah.
it seems It seems like a progression of the head passion. Daniel, what would you like to say to our viewers, for BoStoners viewers?
I would like to say we are not government property, and I would like you to say it with me, and I would like all of your listeners to say it with me too. We are not government property. We are free. Say that. Say it out loud, because we can't just like hear it and think like, okay, yeah, we live in a free country. No, you have to say it every once in a while, and you have to believe it. We are free. We are not government property. The government was created to serve us. We are its master. We tell it what to do. And we have to get out of this routine of allowing the government to pass rules that control us, which ultimately it does two things. One, it controls us. Two, it creates an excuse for it to steal money from us. Oh, well, you weren't wearing your helmet while you were riding your bicycle. We're going to take your money. We have to understand that this is not the world that we're supposed to live in. Furthermore, if you want to go further than that, the system of taxation that we have is what has taxed us into poverty. And as you pointed out, it's taxed us into slavery. And this is not what the human condition was designed to be. We weren't meant to go to work day in, day out and
Yeah,
work,
it doesn't
eight,
feel
10 hours.
right. It doesn't feel right physically.
It doesn't. And there's a reason for that. It's because it's not right. And we're trapped in this world of thinking, well, if we don't have jobs, how are we going to feed ourselves? Just look back a couple hundred years when most people didn't have jobs and they just found a little piece of land and they homesteaded and they traded within their communities. It's actually very possible, but we've traded in that freedom for the big cities where you want to pay. You can't buy a skyscraper, right? So you just rent one little cube within there so that you can live close to all these luxuries and amenities. And we have to understand that that's a trade-off, and we should always have something to fall back on. We should always figure out a way to save and invest in our future so that we're not constantly working, because things are going to happen. We might get sick. We might get injured. We might be unable to work. We might just want to retire at some point before we're 90 and enjoy life without having to work. And that's totally possible for everybody in this country.
Hmm.
We just have to change our mindset.
Sure. Good, good thinking. Daniel, if you become a president, will you please make sure that you will limit your own power and all the future presidents' power, and especially not allow them to have Twitter accounts?
I don't know about Twitter accounts. I'm kind of dangerous on there myself.
Not
Sometimes
as a, let's, like, without nuclear stuff.
right. So yeah, no, I absolutely will take that power away from future presidents by, we're going to be shutting down a lot of these organizations that shouldn't exist. The FBI, the DEA, the CIA, the NSA, the TSA. All of these organizations they're completely wasteful. They shouldn't be put on the backs of the taxpayers. A lot of them are just there to benefit corporations and help them pad their pockets. And that's not something the American taxpayer should be paying for. So we're going to take all that power away from the presidents. Now, of course, in doing so, we have to make sure that Congress comes up and cleans up afterwards. Because if I just shut these organizations down and then my term is up, another president comes in. If
Yep.
those laws are still in place, that means those other presidents can just come around and just create those organizations again. So
Reverse,
we
yeah,
still,
like what Trump is doing with Obama's laws.
yeah, it's if you shut a program down, you have to make sure the laws are repealed as well. And we have to get people to understand. Maybe we need a new process where the citizens can keep Congress more accountable, because they do this to us all the time. They come up with a bill that's going to hurt us a lot, and they pass it without even telling us about it. They pass them almost in secret. They come up with a bill that's 50,000 pages. They come out and say, hey, we're going to vote on this. And of course, all the lobbyists already have all the congressmen in check.
Yep.
And they say, yeah, just go vote on that bill. And nobody's read it. The people don't even know about it. And it's like, what are you guys doing here?
Thug life, thug life.
Yeah, right. We have to fix that part of the system as well.
For sure.
We need to make sure that we the people have the power to shut down these congressmen from passing these laws like this, so that they're not just like coming in the middle of the night to steal all of the power away from the people and stick it right back in their hands.
For sure. Uh, so in my hand, I'm holding about 100 flyers that I have printed out from your website, uh,
Awesome.
and I'll explain how to get these, guys. Uh, Go to Behrman2020.com. Look around, you'll be able to see these flyers. Print them out, spread them. If you're a college student, do what all college students do. Protest, do your thing, print the shit out, put it under other people's windshield wipers. Okay? Spread the word. Let's start the battle. So Daniel, thank you very much for taking your time to chill with BoStoners. This is very exciting. And
Absolutely.
if I had a big yellow hat like yours, I would take it off and bow before you for your courage and patriotism. This is really, you're a courageous person. You're standing up against the system. It's not safe for you. You know it. Everyone know it. Uh, you're a brave person. Uh, Thank you guys for watching our interview with Daniel Behrman, the 2020 presidential candidate. Please support Dan at www.behrman, Behrman 2020.com, or look for his handle, which is at Dan Behrman on social media networks. Also, don't forget to check out BoStoners.net or at BoStoners420 on Instagram. And before I let Daniel go, I'm going to show you what I made for him. I'm holding in my hands a little joint. Well, it's not that little. On the joint, it says Behrman 2020. I'm going to blast it up as a blessing to sanctify his success, his luck, uh, his election for the future. In May, you said we can start doing this. How do we
So
proceed?
in May, we're having the convention where I'm hopefully going to get the actual nomination. But until then, we're going to be campaigning. We're actually on our way to New Hampshire. We're going to be in Concord, New Hampshire, this weekend for the New Hampshire convention. And we're into convention season, so we're going to have conventions going on for the next couple months, all the way up until May.
Uh, when are you in New Hampshire? I got 9 to 5 job, but I'd love to meet you,
It,
man.
it's this weekend. I'll send you the details, but
Yeah,
it's this weekend in Concord, New Hampshire. I'm actually flying out there on Friday night.
fantastic. This weekend, like, wow, that's like an hour drive from where I live.
I'm actually flying into Boston and taking a bus up there.
What time? When are you coming?
I'll have to look that up, but I'll get it to you.
We have a limousine, Cadillac limousine. We can pick you up in it, man.
That would be awesome.
Hell yeah, dude. I'll send you the link. We usually pick up like singers and artists for our interviews, but we're gonna drive a presidential candidate in our Cadillac, guys.
Nice, nice. Can we spark one up in there?
You, if you don't, I'll call the police.
All right.
Daniel, thank you very much. Guys, please don't forget to vote. And before I let you go, Daniel, please tell, like, I just voted for the first time last year, right? I didn't know how to vote, what to do. Can you just briefly tell people how to properly vote for your candidacy and your party?
Yeah, so first, the most important thing is to make sure you're registered to vote and do it early, because a lot of times they have deadlines, they sneak up on you. And sometimes when you register the first time, the paper gets lost in the system. So just make sure you register to vote as soon as possible and make sure you confirm that you're registered. And then make sure you find out the right place to go to vote. The final election is going to be in November of this year. So you want to make sure you know where to go, and you want to vote. I'm with the Libertarian Party, and most of the people on the Libertarian platform completely agree with at least 90% of my platform. So if you like what I have to say, you're probably going to like what they have to say. But of course, since we're different than the Democrats and the Republicans, we're not going to. I don't. I don't anyway. I don't tell you to blindly support anybody in this party. I tell you to look them up for yourself. But I know a lot of libertarians that are running for different offices, whether it's state Congress or U.S. Congress or dog catcher or mayor. They're really great people and they really do believe in a lot of the same things that I believe in. They want to reduce government so that you can have more freedom and a better life.
That's the bottom line. Daniel,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you hopefully this weekend. If not, we would love to continue supporting you and doing these podcasts periodically so we can hype up the crowd so we can pass the message.
Sounds awesome.
Legalize here, legalize there, legalize here, legalize that. Like that. Like that. It's another day.